Traditional offices are facing a renaissance of new technologies and co-working spaces. With the future of work changing so rapidly, we sat down with an industry expert, someone who broke through a crowded market and found success by tweaking the recipe to an otherwise stale solution. Join us in today's conversation with Arian Lewis, founder and CEO of Kiln, and investor Curt Roberts as we bring you both sides of A Perfect Pitch. Perfect Pitch is a podcast from Kickstart that reveals the minds of both investors and entrepreneurs throughout a startup's journey. I'm your host, Karen Zelnick. I'm really excited to introduce everybody. This is so fun to do this live.
It is.
I'm really excited to introduce everybody to today's guests. Arian, you earned your MBA from Oxford University with a focus on strategy and innovation. After co-founding 2 companies, you served as Director of Strategic Partnerships and Open Innovation at Barclays, a universal bank based in London. And I have been told that as a teenager, you spent 3 years building a spaceship simulator.
I did indeed.
Which is probably one of the most interesting facts we've shared about.
Yeah, I would tuck myself away late at night and watch Star Trek. And basically, I wanted to live out my dreams. So I built the bridge of the Starship Enterprise in my garage.
That's amazing.
And then I charged my friends money to come and play.
You made money off this.
Yeah, no, it was a business for sure. Yeah.
That's even better. Do you have any photos of it?
I do have a few photos.
We are going to have to include those in the show notes because that's impressive. That's amazing. And then anything else we should know about you?
You know, we're coming to you live today from Kiln's podcast studio. I like to think of myself as a creative, although I know real creatives and I know that I'm not in that category, but I'd like to aspire to be a creative. How does that sound?
I mean, I feel like building a spaceship simulator requires a lot of creativity.
Yeah.
So I'll put you in that category.
It was a serious fire hazard.
Yeah.
My mom couldn't get the house insurance renewed. So eventually we had to demolish it.
Is that because you had weapons?
No, I did all the wiring myself. So I soldered all these lights.
You violated all kinds of code.
It was a total fire hazard, just waiting to just blow up. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I cannot wait to see the photos. That's so great. And Curt, always great to have you back on the show. We have a link to your bio in our show notes. I do like to cover interesting facts about Curt every time on the show. You're our travel enthusiast on the team. So tell us about a recent adventure you've been on.
Okay, so back in June, I took my first multi-day bike tour, which was in Tuscany. We ended up, I think, climbing over 22,000 feet over 6 days, which for really serious cyclists is not that much. For me, it was an extraordinary amount. I survived it, but it was a delightful experience.
I bet the food was good.
The food was one of the reasons to do it.
Yes.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, I'm picturing you on a bike with a charcuterie board mounted to the front.
No, nothing like
spaghetti.
That.
Yeah, a little spaghetti.
No, that would have been really awful.
Vino.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Arian, let's get started and let's tell our listeners a little bit about Kiln.
Okay, so Kiln is a boutique lifestyle brand. We are focused on elevating the quality of life while at work. We currently have locations in Utah, Idaho, Colorado, and California as of this week.
Amazing. I feel like that deserves a round of applause.
Yeah, we're really excited about that. So today we had a call with our team and we were talking about surfing and skiing and all the great things that you can do across our Kiln network. So it's really quite a fun business right now. We're expanding across primarily the western part of the United States, and we provide office to companies of 200 and under. And I only say that because we don't have offices for 200, but we have a lot of companies that use Kiln as a home base. Even if, they're primarily a remote business, they use Kiln to gather and to connect and to build. So, and in Utah, we have over 2,000 members, over 350 companies call Kiln home.
So impressive. And the offices are beautiful. I feel like we should also post a video in our show notes of a walkthrough of some of the offices. But
yes.
Curt, you were introduced to Kiln at a time where shared workspace companies were crowding a very mature space. What made Kiln stand out?
Yeah, we first met Arian and the founding team of Kiln several years ago as the company was just getting started. And we really didn't have an opportunity to invest early. but we had a sense of what Kiln was about. And Arian presented a vision and a confidence about what this company would be that stood out to us as a likely world-class entrepreneur. And Arian really wanted close partnerships with the venture funds in the area and invested a lot of time and effort in building those relationships with us. It wasn't really until COVID that Arian and his team offered us the opportunity to take a look. And I think if I remember our conversations, Arian, you really didn't have much of a sense that this would be a high probability investment for us. It was kind of like, hey, if you want to take a look at this, great.
We don't sort of fit into your typical niche.
Yeah, that's right. And if you look at Kiln as a real estate company, we definitely wouldn't be an investor in real estate companies. But the business model of Kiln is not that. It's more about the real estate investors capitalizing the sites. And then Kiln is a management company over the top that really manages the experience and makes sure that each of these sites is in the right place with the right experience, delivering the right services to the tenants. And we expected, I think, given what was happening in COVID, that even though shared workspace felt like a relatively saturated business, we really believed that these new behaviors of remote work would probably have some durability, and that we would see companies over time really not choosing to lease in the traditional old way, having all of their employees come into a central office every day and signing these long, expensive leases with little flexibility about how much space they took. It's all a long way of saying it felt to us like the right time to make a bet based upon how Kiln has performed not only during COVID, which was really tricky because nobody was supposed to be in person anywhere, given how the company's performed as COVID restrictions have relaxed and the company is growing, and my role as an observer on the board, I see what the plans look like for the continued growth of the company. And so I think we made a really, really good bet here.
And Arian smiled. He was like, yeah, you did. You made a very good bet. Yeah.
You made a good bet. But it was more than just a bet. I actually think it's a good strategic relationship and one that there's value being added on both sides. Mm-hmm. And so we've really been grateful to actually have Curt and Kickstart be a part of evolving our strategy and informing the decisions that we make at the top of the company.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit more about how that strategy has evolved since Kickstart's investment?
I think the big change is that we no longer see Kiln just as an office solution. We see it as a lifestyle brand that is going to actually serve a variety of needs for remote first companies, companies that use hybrid work, and companies that are still looking at the way that they looked at office pre-pandemic. There's a big spectrum now of the way that people are looking at the use of office, whereas prior to the pandemic, it was pretty standard.
Yeah.
And it's evolving. The key thing is that flex office comprises less than 1% of office space in the markets that we're working within. And it's expected to go to 30% by 2030. So there's a huge amount of opportunity. Mm-hmm. It's really about executing and understanding what customer that you want to serve.
So the shared workspace is a crowded industry. What fueled your confidence that Kiln would be the new and improved version of what was already there?
It may have felt crowded because there was a lot of momentum around WeWork at the time.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that it is a very young industry. If you look at hotels back in the 1960s, pre the Marriotts of the world coming in and building these incredible brands and networks, that's kind of where Flex Office is at today. I had done and built Flex Office in London and New York and Tel Aviv and Cape Town, South Africa and Mumbai and Vilnius, Lithuania and Manchester, England.
So, gosh, speaking of travel enthusiasts,
I love to travel as well. And I had a really wonderful time building Rise. And Rise is a durable brand. It's actually still operating successfully. It just expanded. In fact, there was a new location that launched in Pune, India, just this last month. So I learned a lot about the product and the way that the product works in different cultures and environments. And I began to see the opportunity that was here in Utah. I actually went to Adam Newman, the founder of WeWork. I was living in Connecticut, working in New York at the time. I met up with Adam and I said, Adam, I'm going to create a co-working brand in Utah. He's like, Utah? He's like, what is Utah? And Utah is a pretty cool place. There's some stuff happening. He's like, you got to start a brand like a co-working brand in an urban market. And I said, no, I actually want to do suburban co-working in tier 2 and tier 3 markets. And he's like, okay, well, whatever you do, you got to go big. You got to go with 40,000 square feet or larger. You can't make small locations work. There's some truth to what he said there, actually. But the key thing was, I actually talked to Adam, and I found that I had a slightly different opinion of what we should do, obviously. And I wanted to come to Utah because there's a home court advantage. I'm from Utah. Hadn't been living here for 17 years, but felt like I understood the market. And I could see how the things that we did in these major markets like London and New York, if we were to bring that to Utah, that I felt it would really resonate with a segment of the market here. And it has.
Let's talk about the timing. Why was the timing right to start Kiln?
Well, I mean, I could give you a couple different answers. I'll give you the honest answer, which is we had tried to spin Rise out of Barclays and turn it into its own company. I had founded Rise from within Barclays, but it was its own brand.
Mm-hmm. And will you tell us, actually, I'm going to interrupt you, tell us a little bit about Rise.
I was brought to Barclays from a company called Tech Capital. I was a co-founder of Tech Capital. We took it public on the London AIM market, which is a small sub-market of the London Stock Exchange. And I had focused in that company on open innovation, or the practice of building multiple products with multiple parties, not necessarily building a product through a vertical integration process like within a company. And Barclays was trying to figure out how they could build new products and services with fintech companies, fintech startups. And so I was brought in to figure that out. And the way that we decided to solve part of that was that instead of bringing startups into a boardroom and reviewing their deck and deciding, okay, we should go with this one or that one, we said, no, we actually need to work around these companies and get better exposure in a more casual setting. So I convinced them to start a co-working space. I had studied co-working as an MBA student and thought this could be interesting. We launched the co-working space in Whitechapel, London, which was like really rough part of London. We took an old department store that had been abandoned and we turned it into a wonderful co-working space for fintech companies. And we hosted the very first meetups for Ethereum with Vitalik. We had some of the earliest blockchain companies come out of that location, Everledger, Chainalysis, a number of others. And it was very successful. And then we launched it across the world. The original brand was actually called Escalator, the Escalator. It's a bad name. It's a bad name. Everybody was like, is it an incubator? Is it an accelerator?
No, it's an escalator.
No, it's an escalator.
It's an escalator.
We thought we could come
It
up.
moves very slowly, but it actually does go
up.
Yeah.
That was the idea.
Unless you get on the wrong one and you're going
and then
down.
you have a problem.
And then you're running up, going down.
The point is, it was bad brand, but Rise was the same idea. So we launched this thing across the world. It was very innovative for Barclays at the time. We built a 200 million pound venture fund that sat alongside it and invested in the companies. We built an accelerator with Techstars. And it's the largest accelerator, global accelerator in the world, because we had 4 locations, London, New York, Tel Aviv, and Cape Town, where we were operating this accelerator. And then we built our own accelerators in Mumbai, Vilnius, and Manchester. And we had over 90 new products a year being created for and with Barclays. We signed on average about 70 contracts between Barclays and these startups on an annual basis. And it really was and still is an important engine of innovation for Barclays, which is the 4th largest financial services company in the world at $1 trillion under management. And I worked very closely with the Chief Design and Digital Officer, which is a guy named Derek White, who's now here in Utah, and then Galileo. I worked closely with the group COO and eventually with the group chairman and CEO. And it was an important part of their strategy, but they loved it so much they wouldn't spin it out. And so I left.
Was the primary concern that they would lose their preferred position in relationships with these fintechs if it went independent?
Exactly. But what was happening was Goldman Sachs and Bank of America and Bank Lumi and Mitsubishi Bank in Japan were all contacting us and saying, we want access to these same startups.
Yeah.
Could we, quote unquote, pay a membership? These would not be small memberships. These would be like $5 to $20 million a year memberships. And we thought we could build a global network of fintech-focused co-working locations with contracts with the world's largest financial institutions. And we absolutely could have if there had been a willingness to let go. And what it would have done is would have brought even more deal flow to Barclays.
Interesting.
But big companies have a hard time changing.
Yes, they do. In fact, for Barclays, honestly, to make that commitment is pretty unusual, I would say, for a large financial institution.
Well, we started with $700,000 of budget, and then we got 15 million, and then we got 23 million. And then, so, we raised money actually inside of the company. We went around on a roadshow inside the company. There were 36 different companies within Barclays. It's interesting you describe the experience that way, because I had the same experience building Nike Plus at Nike. I was lucky when we started to get $2 million, convinced the CFO while I was in my car driving home one night to purchase some patents that would allow us to develop the first version of the device. Otherwise, I didn't have anything. And we basically had to build a working model of it and ultimately pitch that working model to Apple in order to get any interest on the part of the bigger Nike machine to support it. So innovation in a big company is a very, very challenging thing. Yeah, but it allowed me to do something, which is to test out my thinking around the model of co-working.
And you learned a ton.
Yeah, learned a lot and had the experience of learning from a world-class organization at the same time.
Yeah.
So what were those learnings? What did you take from that you now implemented at Kiln?
Yeah, so I learned how to identify and understand new markets, because I was going again from India to Israel to London to New York, and I was having to evaluate the market and its readiness for the product. That was important. Learned how to build the product. The co-founder of Kiln, Lee Radford, was the creative director for that brand as well. He designed all the locations. So very importantly, relationships that have now become a really important part of Kiln. And I learned how the spaces should function and what worked well and what didn't.
I really want to dive a couple layers deep on that, identifying new markets.
Yeah.
How would you coach a new entrepreneur on how to do that?
Spend time in the market and talk to people. The best kind of data, I think, actually comes from interactions, but you have to have a lot of them. Talking with people, that will give you the best insight. You can pull data, but the funny thing about data is it usually tells you what you want it to, but people don't.
That's really interesting. And then for relationships, how would you coach an entrepreneur?
Every relationship that you build is connected in some way, somehow, to every other relationship that you build. I left a company once. It was a wonderful 8 years that I had with this company, Pulte Homes. My dad called me and he said, whatever you do, make sure you leave on the very strongest note possible. Leave a company the way you would want to start in a company. I really thought about that. And, those relationships from those days have also played into my future. And so I guess the key thing is don't burn bridges, build bridges, and do your best to maintain them. Somehow, some way, they all come together in sort of a remarkable way.
Yeah, Curt, I'd love your reaction to that. Both those things, entering new markets and relationships.
I'll comment on relationships first. I think that insight is exactly right. I'm not sure I've been as effective at that as Arian has, but if I go back over my career personally and this relatively discontinuous jumps that I made from one industry to something completely different, and I've now done that 4 times, in all 4 of those cases, the opportunity to do so presented itself because of relationships I had fostered with people that then initiated conversations with me about opportunities to get involved, possibly by changing employment. So, people talk about networking as being something that you really need to do. I would say networking for networking's sake is not horribly useful. What made those relationships powerful for me was that the people that then presented me with those opportunities had actually seen my work. They didn't just know who I was. The fact that they had the chance to see my work, as long as my work was good, that presented the opportunity for those things to happen. And you don't get that in networking events. I think part of what Arian is describing is that for those relationships to be powerful, these people have to know you at a pretty deep level. And that depth, I think, includes some assessment of your competency and your professionalism and your ability to deliver great work. If that happens, folks will always be there to help you along the way.
So the thing that we sometimes don't emphasize, especially with younger entrepreneurs, is that what investors actually are looking for is patterns of success, patterns of resilience, patterns of persistence, patterns of innovation and success. And it isn't just, do you have a good business idea? Do you have a model? It's really like, if we look back through the story of this founder, do we see points of success and strength and resilience along the way? And this is why I think it can be a little challenging if you start a company straight out of college. I think some people it's going to work for, but I think sometimes if you can say, hey, I'm going to take a decade and I'm going to build up a professional acumen and I'm going to show a pattern of commitment and success and hard work, that can really set you up for success as an entrepreneur. It's not just about having the desire to start a company. I had that desire when I built the simulator. I had a snow removal company at 14 years old that I ran for 3 years. But you know what's funny is the first people that invested in Kiln, they knew that I was shoveling snow when I was 16 years old at 4 a.m. for 3 hours.
That's
every
amazing.
time it snowed. And they knew that I would shovel whatever I had to shovel here at Kiln to get it off the ground. And I think that those histories are really important. They're an important part of our own story. So if you're a teenager and you want to be an entrepreneur, work hard. Show that you can work hard. Show that you can fail and get back up again. And if you're a college student, consider going to work for one of the best firms in the world and being an entrepreneur to a degree inside of that firm and building your professional acumen before you decide that you want to go out and build a business model.
I think Arian's right about that. Not just because I've observed it myself, but because the data supports it very, very clearly. If you look at investment returns across all of venture capital, and you correlate those returns to the age of the founding CEO, the highest performing age cohort is founders in their late 40s. And we tend to have this profile of a classic entrepreneur as being someone who's
like early
quite
20s.
young.
Yeah.
Well, look, we have these iconic Bill Gates and people that dropped out of college that kind of started a company and now it's become Facebook.
Zuckerberg.
Yeah. And that's just not normal. And if you really look at the story of those companies, there was usually somebody around that founder early in the journey as well that was bringing some strength and experience that was an important part of the story.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't want to make comments that would discourage young entrepreneurs from pursuing their business. That said, I think we definitely do see a general pattern that would suggest that for those youngest entrepreneurs, as long as they know what they don't know and surround themselves with people who help them avoid blind spots that otherwise are avoidable if you experience them on somebody else's dime,
That's right.
then they're going to be successful. Yeah. The ones that are challenging, I think, are young entrepreneurs that really do believe that they know everything they need to know, don't listen to advice. Oftentimes, they're going to make some very, very serious and big mistakes, and those mistakes come at a cost.
Which can be your critical learning. You can learn from your mistakes.
Yes.
The one thing I will say is that if I were to give myself advice, I would have gone back to myself and said, there's a few critical things. The first decade of your career needs to be not about earning. I was very focused on earning money. It should not be about earning. It should be about learning. You should try and figure out how you can learn everything possible in that first decade and then see what you can deploy in the next decade.
That is a very wise perspective, I think. And it really sets you up for success. Curt, do you have any reactions to that?
Yeah, there are certainly opportunities that people can take out of either undergraduate or graduate school that give you both. I had that opportunity. I had the good fortune coming out of graduate school to go into McKinsey, which was about as intensive a learning environment as you could hope for.
For sure.
I mean, the kind where my brain hurt at the end of every day. And it also paid pretty well. So those things sometimes do come together.
Yeah, but
you know where I see in Utah in particular this being a problem? Direct sales.
Yes.
100%. You can get
percent.
locked into really good income, and you've built a team underneath you, and every summer you're raking in cash.
Mm-hmm.
But you do get to a point in your career where, because you haven't built a more broad-based business acumen, you're limited in what you can do in the next phase of your career.
That's absolutely right.
And then the other thing is, I had a close friend. We both co-founded a company in our teen years. He decided, rather than go to school and get professional experience, he was just going to become an entrepreneur. And I think that because he wasn't learning from others around him, he was learning through his own experimentation. But I think that there are some learnings that have been harder for him to capture. And all I'm getting at is, if you know you're an entrepreneur, if you deep down know that, don't feel like you have to go out and start a company right away. You can work for an entrepreneur. You can work in a startup or in a scale up or in a big corporate that's in an industry you're interested in. It's about learning and then deploying that learning rather than just, I want to start a business, I'm going to go start a company.
I think that's a really, really great insight. Curt, you said you had thoughts too on both, relationships and entering new markets. I would love your insights on entering new markets.
Yeah, I want to actually tell maybe a little bit of a story on that to reinforce what Arian is saying. It is all too common, I think, for companies large and small to rely upon paid research, quantitative data about markets and market opportunities. That research doesn't tell you very much about what you should build or how you should build it. It might give you a big sense of what's possible, but that's about as far as it goes. And the story I'll tell is around an experience that I observed at Nike. I wasn't on the team that was doing this, but Nike had tried at least 4 times to enter the world of skateboarding with an authentic skate product that would serve the athlete of that space in the same way that they do in running or basketball or soccer, and had failed. And pretty consistently, if you ask skaters, Nike was seen as a pretender in the space that wanted to take advantage of the sport as opposed to supporting it. So we ultimately ended up taking this very cagey savvy Nike veteran who'd been around a long time, and we separated him out from the rest of the beast, the big machinery that was just there to rake in large amounts of money and sales. And we said, look, you've got some budget. Go figure this out. We failed over and over again. We're not ready to accept that we can't be legitimate in that sport. Here's what he did. He went to Orange County, Southern California, and hung out at skate parks.
Smart.
And he took a designer with him, and they would watch these skaters, and the designer would sit there and sketch. And while the skaters were resting, they'd walk up and talk to him and say, hey, we're from Nike. Don't shun us. Yeah. We just want to see how you skate and what you do and ask you questions about what's working for you now and what you wish was better. As a result of that, they would not just gather that information, but live and in real time, they would sit there and sketch product and say, okay,
and
we're thinking something like this.
They'd actually show it to them.
Yes.
That's super cool.
Then, once they had some sort of concepts ready, they invited some of these better skaters up to Nike's sports research lab, where they would actually put all these instrumentation on them, slow motion video, watch where the forces were and where problems were with the product, where you could see it was compromising, put a first generation of product out on the basis of those insights, relaunched, and really succeeded. I mean, a mainstream skate brand, but it took what people might discount as anecdotes.
Yeah.
That's not data. That's just anecdotes.
Yeah.
It took that level of insight to ultimately create the product that allowed Nike to successfully enter the sport after failing multiple times.
Yeah. And all the McKinsey consultants in the world could not have done that. And I do love those stories, because the truth is, we think that it's about being really sophisticated.
Yeah.
And actually, most good decisions in business are made on sort of these grassroots basis and on intuition. And intuition is not magic. Intuition is experience meeting opportunity. And experience should be trusted. And we can trust when you've synthesized the information in your head and you're somebody that has experience. And then you can trust your intuition. But we do have this thing that we oftentimes shun, like, well, we can't make a business decision based on intuition. But I really love the experimentation there. A lot of companies spend a lot of money wasting time when they should just go talk to the customer.
Yeah.
Sketching out a shoe in front of the customer and like getting instant feedback, that's totally brilliant.
Yeah. It's what it took to succeed.
Yeah. I think that companies go through evolutions where they get very confident in their product. And then they find it harder and harder to actually make monumental improvements in their innovation versus incremental.
So, Arian, how are you making sure that you don't do that at Kiln, that your innovation doesn't stop?
That's a great question. It is the thing that I worry about the most, that we will scale without improving the product sufficiently during that process. We just launched a really cool collaboration with Sundance. We built this cabin on wheels. It's a meeting room in the mountains.
It's quite cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool, actually. What's really interesting is the response. I've been getting text messages and emails. Hey, can I book this? Hey, I got a buddy that wants this. In Utah, everybody's ready for the hookup, but not the wrong kind of hookup, by the way, for anyone that's listening.
The favorite.
Yeah, if we were saying this in LA, maybe it's a little different.
Yes.
Yeah, but in
Utah
Utah,
has a different definition.
We have a favor culture. But at any rate, we built this beautiful thing that is totally mobile, that's completely off the grid, that has power and AC powered through sunlight, which is really cool. And it's in the most beautiful environment you can possibly imagine in this aspen grove up in Sundance. There's a wonderful collaboration with this very forward-thinking and thoughtful team at Sundance. And it's a step forward for us because we know that we're not about office. We're about the future of work. And that should lead us in a variety of very interesting directions. For example, I don't think we should ever build a meeting room again. I think we should only build film studios where you can have a meeting.
Say more about that.
I don't think people want to hold meetings anymore. I think they want to hold mini productions.
It's sounding to me like Arian wants to elevate the world's consciousness. Is that?
Yeah. I'm like, we're getting deep.
Not quite the consciousness. I just think you want your meeting quality to be high.
Yeah.
And it's not just about a transactional exchange of information. It's about engagement. So what I'm kind of getting at is the future of work is very dynamic. And if we just think about where work was 10 years ago, and we fast forward another 10 years, work and lifestyle are going to continue to merge. They're going to bleed together. And we're going to see that work can be done from a lot of places, and people will pick work that enhances the quality of their life, not just their wallet.
Curt, do you agree?
I do. I think that's right. I think humans crave meaning.
Yeah.
And work, it occupies so much of our time that it's really impossible, I think, for the balance of a person's life to create that sort of sufficient level of meaning and purpose without work supporting that in a very direct way. Again, it's easy to look at Kiln and its early incarnations as just being an elevated execution of co-working. And when people ask me about Kiln and why we invested in Kiln that are not familiar with the company, it's sort of the easiest shorthand way of describing it. It's like, well, so why would you invest in co-working? Well, you sort of have to go experience it to really understand why it's different. One of the companies we invested in, for example, last year or 2 years ago, occupies space in the WeWork facility in Lehigh. And it is absolutely fascinating to go to both facilities and notice the difference between the two. There's a part of me that wants to take a GoPro or just pull out my iPhone and take some video as you walk around the space. The space at WeWork is dead. I mean, it is not an exaggeration.
Do you mean dead in terms of occupancy or dead in terms of energy? And
occupancy is definitely low.
Yeah.
But it is not designed in such a way that it facilitates collaboration and encounters or any energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so you walk into that space and you think, okay, I could rent space here, but it wouldn't really be any different from me working in a normal office. In fact, it would be worse in a lot of ways. And then you go to a kiln and it's a beehive of energy, right? It's just a completely different experience. And you really have to, I think, sit down with Arian and Lee and understand all of the little details about how that gets created. It's almost a Disney-like execution, right? Where everything is thoughtfully done. None of this is by chance. And that was a big confidence builder for us that they were onto an insight that was going to be really different.
Yeah, I think we need another episode where, because you talked about one of the things you learned was designing product. I think we need to sit down, like Curt said, and just talk through how you
I think that would be really cool.
I think it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Kiln has over 20 different bespoke products that we've designed, and they may seem simple like a desk. There's actually a lot of care and thought put into them. A lot of people underestimate the importance of the environment that's around you. So, for example, a company that's going into an environment where the energy is low, I would argue is probably getting 5% less energy out of their team. We don't have good ways to measure that right now, but it's real.
Yeah.
And so I think that going cheap on trying to go into Uncle Joe's back office and get some IKEA desks, you're missing the most important thing, which is that you have a very limited amount of time. And the only way you maximize that time is through your energy and your output. And so any inputs to that energy are going to result in better outputs.
Yeah, there is a lot of data around that too. And even helping people with ADHD, actually focus and there's a lot of psychological things to your space and the energy.
I have ADHD, and
so do I.
Yeah, and a lot of founders are on the ADHD spectrum. I don't know what you'd call it. But what I'll tell you is that most people at Kiln, they spend less than half their time at their desk. Did you know that? It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And they move between these different environments. They might be sitting in front of the fireplace working, and then they might go into a meeting room, or they might be in a casual area of the space or in the kitchen. Curt and I today were in 2 different environments in the course of an hour.
Right.
Each of them was kind of fun and interesting in its own way.
Right. I finished a book recently called Joyful, written by Ingrid Lee. She was a senior leader at IDEO, which is, of course, one of the best design firms in the world. And each of these chapters dealt with different dimensions of design and experience that actually change human behavior. There's a whole chapter on color. There's a chapter on shape.
Love the color.
There's a chapter on nature and how nature affects us. Those little insights, to Arian's point, if you get 5% more out of your entire workforce because of the environment they're working in, and I'm not talking about 5% more hours spent at work, it's just 5% more effectiveness. The compound effect of that over time gets huge. So the thoughtfulness that goes into the space that people work in, I think, is a big deal. It's one of the reasons why personally, I am betting that this phenomenon of remote work, that pendulum is going to shift back a bit. And it's not because we don't want people working from home. It's because the experience of working from home and how people can develop and grow and build relationships is compromised.
There's a lot of information that we don't know yet, which is when we're together, there is actually an exchange of energy.
Yes.
That's happening. That's
doesn't happen on Zoom.
We're not seeing it, but it's real. And
that's right.
The most complicated problems in the world are not going to get solved by individuals sitting in the solemnity of their own room.
There is no question in my mind that you are correct.
If you want to do something great, you need to do it with other people, and you need to combine your creativity with theirs.
Yes. And our job, I think, is not just to demand that people return to work. It's to create an environment that they crave going to. I'm using the title of the book now. It's joyful. It's way better than home.
It's got to be better than home.
I want to go there.
Yeah.
Right? That's our job, I think, as people who lead companies, is to make it such that people simply can't imagine working in any other way.
I really could talk about this for hours.
May I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
All of us sort of intuitively know that our time is valuable. And I have for many years thought that the most valuable thing we have in this life is time. But I'm beginning to realize I might be wrong. I think the most valuable thing we have, the most precious thing, is the expression of our own creativity and individuality in a way that can impact others. If we spend a lot of time and don't get that done, then the time is irrelevant. But a little amount of time, I think about Steve Jobs, right? I mean, if Steve Jobs had been on the earth 100 years longer, how would it been? I don't know. But for the amount of time he had real impact.
Changed the world.
He really did. And so you need to place yourself in an environment where you can really express the very best of your own individuality and creativity. And that usually is drawn out of you through your interactions with others.
Yeah. I'm geeking out. This is so great. But we do need to wrap up, which is so unfortunate. I think we need to have you back. But we always ask someone at the end of the podcast, we ask them one question. And that is, what is an effective practice that you've implemented in your work or personal life that has had a great impact on your success?
When I was 14, I put a tape in my bedside alarm clock that had a 15-minute speech on attitude by Earl Nightingale. You can believe.
I have no idea who Earl is.
I know. I was like, Earl. Yeah, Earl.
Old kind of guru on attitude. And I listened to this thing over and over. And some days you have to put on an attitude that isn't natural. And you have to bring yourself out of a funk. And other days it's just, you're just popping and you're feeling great. And I think you've got to be very conscious about the energy that you bring into every situation. I would say that is the thing that has maybe been unique to my success, is that I am very aware of what kind of energy I want to deliberately bring into something. Sometimes I don't do it perfectly. I'm by no means like the expert, but I really genuinely care about bringing the right attitude to what I'm doing. But I started that at 14 years old.
Thanks. Yeah. And Curt, I'm sure you've noticed Arian's amazing attitude. That's probably why you invested.
Yeah, your career teaches you a lot as you go. I like, just for fun sometimes, to sort of create binaries, right? And one of the binaries that I think is a general truism is that people generally fall into one of two categories. They're either energy givers or they're energy takers. And one of the things I have decided in my life is I want to surround myself only with energy givers. You can't always do that because you don't always have control of everyone that works and lives around you. But Arian, in some ways, what he's describing is a habit that turns him into a consistent energy giver. People crave that. They want to be around people like that.
Yeah, definitely.
I really love this conversation. I'm personally fascinated by so much of it. Thank you, Arian and Curt, for being here on the show today.
Cheers.
Thank you, Karen.
And of course, thank you for listening as we dive deep into what it takes to create a perfect pitch. If you want to learn more about our investor, Curt Roberts from Kickstart, or our founder, Arian Lewis at Kiln, we'll have a link to the company and a longer bio in our show notes at kickstartfund.com. You can listen to more episodes of Perfect Pitch wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you like what you're learning, leave us a review or rating. We'll be back next time with more insights from entrepreneurs and the investors who fund them. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing.